Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining in on the Reseller Hustle, my very first episode. My name is Amanda, aka Tuition Ain't Cheap. If you follow me on my other social media accounts, I am also on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Hopefully for the long run. Now, since this is my very first episode, I figured I should introduce myself. I'm really bad about that, even on my social media accounts. I don't think I've made too many introduction videos at all. So again, my name is Amanda. I have been reselling on eBay since 2002. Poshmark somewhere around 2015. Now I did close my Poshmark account in February of 2024. I just wasn't having too many sales over there. And I didn't feel like it was worth the time for me to cross list. And then I switched my cross lister to Autoposher, and I've been having consistent sales over there since I reopened my account in November of 2024. Now I also sell on Mercari. I've been on Mercari since 2015. And then I also sell on Bonanza. So my specialty is discontinued products. Those sell very well over on Bonanza. And I'll talk about all of these platforms in later podcasts. My podcast will be based around eBay just because that is my main platform. But most of my episodes will just be about reselling in general, the ups and downs, what's going on with my eBay, and then highly focused on information. But it's definitely not based on this is what you should do because this is what I would do. There is no right way to be a reseller. There are so many different business models. You just have to find what works for you. And I find it helpful to hear what other people are doing, what other people are selling, why they like to sell those items, why they like to do things the way that they do, whether I decide that their method would be a good method for me, or maybe that I like their certain parts of their method, but other things I'd like to try differently. It's always nice to hear somebody else's perspective on things. So a little about me. I, again, started selling in the fall of 2002. I had just graduated from high school. I remember that summer/fall really well because my grandparents had sold their home and they were traveling across the U.S. in an RV, and they were parked in my parents' driveway. We had some family come over, and my cousin Chris gets all the credit for me becoming an eBay reseller. I remember we were sitting in my parents' RV on the couch, and he was telling me about a friend who had just joined eBay. They were making really good money reselling car parts. At the time, I worked at West Point Stevens, which was a linen store, and they manufactured all the linens for Ralph Lauren. And we were getting in a truck of supposedly third quality comforters, and these comforters were only priced at $9.99. So with my discount after tax, I was paying a little bit less than $8 per comforter. I spoke with my managers, and they had absolutely no problem with me purchasing the comforters to resell on eBay, which is wild to me because nowadays that would never happen. Now, when you work retail, you usually have to sign something saying that you will not sell the items that you purchase with your discount on eBay. I have had a few friends work for Ralph Lauren, and when we would order things online, there was a little button we had to click every time we placed an order saying that we would not resell the items that we were purchasing with their discount. But surprisingly, back then my managers had absolutely no problem with it. But I guess I really shouldn't be surprised because eBay was pretty new at that time. And if you weren't somebody who was really into technology or who got on the computer a lot, it probably wasn't something that you knew very much about. So honestly, they knew I was reselling them, but they probably didn't know how much I was going to get for them. I never told anybody how much money I was making, anybody at work at least. So I was 18 years old. I was a brand new college student. I was still living at home, but I didn't have a lot of money because I spent my money foolishly because I was 18 years old. I did have my graduation money put away, but I didn't want to touch it. And I was young, so I really didn't see the potential for how much money I could make or that it was starting a business. I just saw the money that I was gonna have to tie up, and I was really iffy about it. And I remember sitting down and telling my husband at the time, who was my boyfriend, telling him about it, and he gave me $100, and he was a broke college student at the time as well. But he gave me $100, told me to invest it into this, to treat it like a business, not to pay him back, just to use that $100 to keep on purchasing comforters. So when I made money, I needed to purchase more inventory, which was a little hard when you're 18 years old and you're selling one comforter for $400 to $500 and you're making that money super quick. I wanted to spend it instead of reinvesting it, but my husband has always had a very business oriented mind, and he really helped me at the beginning of my eBay career, not only financially, but just how to make correct business decisions and not treat eBay like it was a hobby. So I purchased my first round of comforters and I made a ton of money. And I was hooked. I have been reselling on eBay since. After the comforters, we got a round of sheets, and I made even more off of the sheets than I made on the comforters. And don't get me wrong, I was 18, so of course we were spending some of that money foolishly on a trip. I have always had a thing for handbags, so I bought myself a couple of handbags, but that was really the beginning of everything, between my cousin Chris telling me about eBay, my husband giving me the $100, and then us getting in all of those comforters and sheets. That is really what got me started on eBay. I did retail arbitrage for years after this. At the time, I lived very close to an outlet. So my husband and I would go to the Coach outlet. We would go to the Pottery Barn outlet. There was an outlet center a little bit further away as well. We would go to the Lord & Taylor out there, and then the off Saks Fifth Avenue. Now at Coach, we would purchase $2,000 to $3,000 worth of handbags at one time, put them all up for sale the same day. We were very disciplined about that. And then whatever didn't sell at that 30-day mark, we would take back to the store. And they absolutely hated us at the Coach outlet. They loved us on the day we purchased everything, but on day 29, when we came back with whatever didn't sell, they did not like us. Now, sometimes we hardly had anything to bring back. Other times, nothing sold. They definitely did not like us. And it was a lot different back then, too. Now, I would give my items way more than 30 days to sell, but eBay was totally different back then. Like I said, there were no buy it nows. It was a 7-day auction. If it didn't sell, you would relist it or you would take the item back. Now, you guys, my dates are always off. So I have done a couple about me videos, or, I've done an interview before with somebody, and my dates are always off. My memory is so bad. My long-term memory. My short-term memory is pretty good, but long-term memory is pretty bad. So I always try to base everything off of how old I think my daughters were at the time. So I think it was 2014-ish when I lost my eBay account. I was selling clothing at the time. So I went from retail arbitrage to clothing, thrift store clothing. My husband went to only working 4 days a week. He would go thrifting with me 1 day a week on Mondays, and we would thrift from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. because this is pre-COVID, and the thrift stores actually stayed open late. Well, in my area. I don't know if they stay open late in your area, but now thrift stores, they open later and they close earlier in my area after COVID. Anyway, so he would go thrifting with me 1 day a week. We would have a family member pick up our daughters from school. They would hang out at the house with the girls all day long while we thrifted. So at the time, that's what I was doing when I lost my eBay account. And I was selling a lot of clothing. I wasn't selling six figures, but we were pretty close to it at that time. I've shared my old Instagram. So at the time that we were selling clothing, I also pushed my stuff on Instagram. It's so funny to look back at those posts and see the stuff. I mean, we were selling really nice stuff. We were finding Gucci, a lot of high-end Ralph Lauren, stuff that still sells now, we were selling back then. So 2014, I believe, I lose my eBay account. I sold 3 Gucci shirts to an overseas buyer, and I bought the shirts at, it was either the Lord & Taylor outlet or the off Saks Fifth Avenue. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of those outlets. They were authentic. So I submit my receipt to eBay because they ask for it, because these people opened a case, claimed that they were fake, and eBay wouldn't accept the receipt and they just shut my eBay account down. And at the time, I was a power seller. I believe it was still power seller back then. I might be wrong, but whatever it was at the time, I was a high-performing eBay store. I had 100% feedback, and that's probably the last time I had 100% feedback. Like I said, I had no issues on my eBay account at all, and they just shut my account down because it was 3 items, and that was like back when you get 3 strikes and you're done on eBay, and they just shut my account down. So what I did, that account was in my husband's name. At that time, I did everything in my husband's name. So I opened an account in my name, and they shut that down within hours. Then my cousin who was watching our girls on Mondays, she told me, just open an account in my name. I'll 1099 you and you can sell under me. Just use a VPN. So I did that, and I was able to sell for a couple of months, and then eBay caught on, shut the account down. Well, that's when I started selling with my dad, and we both hated selling clothes. So, but we kept on because that's what I knew. And what we did was I thrifted, took pictures, and listed everything, and my dad would store it. You should have seen my parents' garage. It looked like they had a department store. At the time, my dad stored everything on racks. He had rolling racks in the garage, and my mom wasn't allowed to park in the garage anymore. My parents had a 2.5 car garage, either 2 or 2.5 car garage, and it was full with rolling racks with clothes hanging up. And I believe it was in May because it was snowing and it shouldn't have been snowing. And it was either April or May. So you never know in Michigan. It can snow in May for sure. You just never know. So I swear it was May, but it could have been April. We were out at garage sales, and I was with my mom and dad and then my 2 girls. And we were out garage sailing. It started snowing. There was one more sale really close to my house. We were heading back to the house to warm up, and my dad's like, we should stop. So I agreed, and my mom said that she would stay in the car with the girls for us just to go because it was cold. So me and my dad went, and there was a case full of Barbie stuff and a box full of Barbie furniture. Everything was from the 60s. At the time, I didn't know. I knew it was old because it was a bubble cut Barbie, and they have a certain look. You can just tell that they're old. So at that time, I did not have the buying power that I have right now. I had spent all of my money that day on garage sales. I did have some bill money that I had not deposited yet that my husband wanted me to deposit, and I went ahead and took a chance, spent some of that on the Barbie stuff. I believe it was $75, and I ended up making over $1,000. So I decided that that's what my dad and I should sell. So we started purchasing Barbie lots, and one of the lots we ended up getting some vintage G.I. Joe stuff from the 60s, and my dad got really into that, so he would research and find the G.I. Joe stuff from the 60s, and then I was heavily focused on the Barbies, and we were selling Barbies and G.I. Joes from the 60s for probably about 3 years, and we did very, very well doing that. That was definitely the best time that I had reselling on eBay, and that's something that I plan to get back into this year, is focusing on vintage Barbies, even though they're pretty hard to find now. A lot harder now than they were back then. During that time that we were selling the Barbies, my dad and I also were hired to liquidate a church. Catholic Charities was building a warming center for the homeless in downtown Flint, and they had a church that was empty, but it had a ton of stuff inside of it, and they were looking to sell that stuff to fund the warming center. My dad and I were selling the oven that was like from the 40s that was inside the, so, okay, let me break this down. There was a church, but then hooked up to the church, there was also a convent that had probably about 8 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms. It was huge. Plus there was a basement that was very creepy, but full of really cool stuff. And then the church had quite a few different areas where they had things that they had stored for decades. And I really feel like that was a reseller school for me. I learned how to ship crazy big, heavy items. That's why up until the last like 1.5 to 2 years, I'm really, even now, I'm really not afraid to ship anything. I know that I can package and ship anything, any size, no problem. And it's because of that job that we had. We were shipping like the pink and blue and peach sinks out of bathrooms We were taking toilet paper holders off the walls that were all different ceramic colors, selling those. We sold the cabinets off the walls in the kitchen. They were, I can't remember the brand, but they were like that powder blue color from the 50s. We sold the oven that was in there. We had people flying in from out of state, renting U-Hauls and coming in and picking up stuff from this church. We had somebody who wanted us to find somebody with a crane to remove the safe that was in the middle of the church. It was such an experience. We made so much money. It was a lot of fun. I had fun hanging out with my dad, and we made a lot of great connections. That's actually how we started our estate sale business. I don't want to get too far off topic, but my parents and I also run an estate sale business. We maybe have 3 or 4 estate sales a year. It's basically word of mouth. We don't advertise or anything like that. It's strictly word of mouth. People we know, and then people who hear about us because of our sales, or people who hire us for a sale and then they have a family member who needs to go into a home or passes away, and then they contact us. My cousin's also a realtor, so he has contacted us to do a sale. I think our last sale was from him. He had purchased a home. The man needed to move quickly, so we staged and set up a sale within 4 days. So that was off of that Catholic Charities job, starting our estate sale business, which is a lot of fun. If you follow me on social media, I go to estate sales all the time with my parents. My parents also resell, kind of, sorta. I try to get on my mom to get her stuff listed, but that doesn't always happen. So when I was selling the Ralph Lauren bedding, I got my parents into it as well. And we would drive to Indiana, Illinois, and then all around Michigan, go to all the Ralph Lauren outlets when Ralph Lauren was still selling their bedding at the outlets. And we would purchase, my parents would purchase some, I would purchase some, and then we would sell it separately, or we would go in and my parents would purchase everything, but then I would list, ship, and do everything after that, and then we'd split the profits. Okay, you guys, so I lose my account, start selling with my dad, and then the summer of 2017 hits, and my husband needs my help to open a business. He claimed he only needed me for 2 weeks, but I ended up staying there and helping him for 3 years. And even now, if you see me in one of my YouTube videos and I have 2 phones on me, it's because I am still my husband's secretary. I just don't go in at all. So I helped my husband open his business in the summer of 2017, and then it was December of 2018, I decide that I want to start selling on eBay again. I had started listing a few things on Mercari, and I tried to open an account, and it worked. I couldn't believe it. We had moved, so I had a new address, I had a new bank account, I had a brand new phone, so none of my IP addresses, nothing like that was tying me to that old eBay account that got suspended. My social security number obviously was the same, but for whatever reason, eBay let me open up an account. And I started listing a little here and there, and then COVID hit, and my husband's business was shut down for 4 months, so I had a lot of downtime, and I still had a large inventory of vintage Barbie stuff in the basement. I decided to start listing that. I would put ads on Craigslist. I was doing porch pickups. I was able to find quite a bit of vintage Barbie inventory online to have shipped to me, so I was doing really well. And then I remember my sister and my 2 daughters and I decided to take a vacation. So we were chilling on the beach in Traverse City. We rented a house. We were just relaxing for, I believe, a week. And my husband called me, and it was a Saturday, and he told me that the business could open on Monday, that our governor had held a press conference, and he was able to open his business on Monday. He needed me to come home as soon as possible to help him get everything ready. We were slammed. It was crazy, and I let my eBay account slip. I was not shipping items out on time. People were opening cases and I didn't see, and I was letting cases close without me answering them, and I became a below rated seller in 2020. It was June of 2020, and it took me until June of 2021 to not be a below rated seller. And that really motivated me, being a below rated seller, to never let that happen again. I was paying an extra 5% in fees to eBay. Now I believe it's 6%. It's even a little higher. My items were buried in the search results. So if we were selling the same thing, your item might be on page 1 of the search results. Mine would be on like page 7. I could not promote my items. And I know there's some people who do not promote their items. I promote my items. It definitely helps my sales, but I could not promote my items. So it was a really dark time for my eBay. I could only list so many items and sell a certain dollar amount every single month. So I was having to, if I found something really good, but I was already at my max at what I had listed, my issue was the number that they would let me list. I believe it was like 400 items or something like that, and $15,000. So I would have to pull some items to be able to list the items that I was finding. It was rough. It was a really bad time. But it definitely motivated me to be a better reseller. Now, once that was lifted in June of 2021, I have not looked back. My sales have quadrupled, if not more than that. I started making content before, when I was a below rated seller on Instagram, just a little things here and there. And then once I wasn't a below rated seller, I felt like I could make content, and I don't know, it's kind of hard. Even now, like, I have a 98.1% feedback. I bet you 1 or 2 of those negative feedbacks are my fault. I sent the wrong item. I want to say that's the only reason that any of my negative feedbacks are my fault. But I remember being afraid to start sharing content because I felt, because I was a below rated seller, that people would feel like maybe I shouldn't take advice from her. And sometimes I think I feel that way because I have that 98.1% feedback. But then I think about it, most people don't leave feedback. Majority of the time, the type of person who leaves a feedback is somebody who wants to complain. And my negative feedbacks are mostly because people don't read. I'd say that's 90% of the issue. You know, you think you're getting a 6-inch item and you get it and you leave me a negative feedback because it's not a 6-inch item, but nowhere in my listing do I say that the item is 6 inches. But anyway, so I kind of felt back then like I didn't jump into making content like I should have because of my feedback, and I was a below rated seller. But now I don't care. I've been doing this for a very long time. I don't push people to do things the way I do them. I just like to share what's going on with me and knowledge that I have, and if my information helps 1 or 2 people, I'm totally happy with that. I remember what it meant to be a young family and sell $500 in a day. So if I can help somebody else achieve that, then I am beyond happy. And the fact that only 98.1% of my customers were happy doesn't make me any less credible. Anyways, let's switch it to other than business, a little bit personal. So again, my name's Amanda. I am 40. I have been married to my husband for a very long time. We've been dating since 2001. We have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. I have been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. I have not worked outside of the home except for that little bit that I helped my husband open his business. I have always resold on eBay, but no, eBay has not always been a full-time income. That has not happened until very recently. Now, there were some years sprinkled in here and there where I would make decent money, but as far as a full-time income, that has not happened until recently. I'd say 2023, 2024 were my first years of actual, like, full-time income money. And I work part-time. I do not work more than 25 hours a week on eBay. I'd say I work way more on my social media and I get paid way less. But I enjoy the social media. I enjoy selling on eBay too. But when I get that message from the unhappy, just miserable person on eBay, it makes me want to say, forget this. I don't want to do this. Sometimes. For a quick second, I read it and then I get over it. But it can be discouraging at times. So again, you guys, my podcast will be all about reselling, maybe a little motivational stuff here and there. I have some doozies that I want to share with you guys. There's never a dull moment for me. I swear, I attract the crazies on social media and on eBay. I get some of the craziest buyers, and it's like a loose cannon. I just never know what they're going to do, if they're going to leave me negative feedback, if they're going to open a faulty return. I have had some crazy things happen over the last couple of weeks, and I will share all of that with you. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you, and you guys will hear from me in a couple of days. I plan to have my podcast come out every single Monday, and my husband will be joining me, so I won't have to just be to myself. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and I'm so excited for you guys to join in on my new venture with me.